And I will just go ahead and get started because I know we have a lot to cover today. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining today's session entitled Water, the Final Frontier of Women's Economic Empowerment, where we will spend the next hour discussing how household access to water and sanitation connects to a woman's ability to realize her full earning potential. My name is Zara Shabir, and I'm the Senior Analyst for Knowledge and Learning at water.org, and I'm honored to open up today's session. The impact of access to household water and sanitation for women and girls is well understood in terms of health, safety, and education. However, the connection between access and income remains overlooked, as does the value of access to wash in the workplace. Recent research conducted by water.org alongside the Carrion Foundation found that there was a link between women's decision-making in attaining water and sanitation financing for improvements and household finances. Between 2019 and 2020, the Carrion Foundation interviewed over 4,000 microfinance clients as part of an impact evaluation of water.org's water credit program in India. We wanted to understand the impact of women's participation in water and sanitation investment decisions on household dynamics and water and sanitation related outcomes. What they found was that women's participation in the decision-making process not only resulted in improved access to safe water and sanitation facilities, but it was also positively correlated to the household's overall financial health. Further demonstrating the intricate link between women's decision-making and household finances, we found that households where women participated in the decision-making process were more likely to make small routine monthly savings, contributing to the financial health of the household and their ability to invest in household improvements such as water and sanitation. But this is just the tip of the iceberg in really understanding the impact that access to water and sanitation has on women's income, either now or in the future. Lending to low-income people for water and sanitation is a relatively new practice that's seen a lot of growth over the past decade. A lot more could be achieved, however, if a greater number of risk-averse lenders change their assumption that lending to wash is riskier because it's not income generating. Today's discussion is an important step in starting the conversation to start changing that assumption. The link between access to wash and women's income is starting to become more visible. The research I mentioned earlier establishes a connection between women's participation in household investment decisions and accelerated access to quality water and sanitation services. The first part of today's conversation goes deeper by featuring a panel discussion between several stakeholders who have developed programs that build upon either the understanding that there's a connection between access to wash and women's income or economic opportunity, or the reality that designing to empower women economically requires delicate nuance. Then in part two of the conversation, we'll shift into listening mode, where we're going to hear from women in the field who've either taken loans themselves to enable access to water and sanitation, or who've helped women in their area access these loans. Their lived experiences of the dynamics at play and the impacts upon their lives, and where relevant, their incomes, will help us all achieve a better understanding of this underexplored connection. We're all really excited that you joined us here today. Please share your name, location, and organization in the chat, and also feel free to drop in your questions that you may have throughout today's presentation. Leslie, Lesha, and I will be moderating the chat when we're not facilitating the conversation. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Leslie Porres, the manager of sector strategy over at water.org, to open up part one of the conversation. Leslie?
Thanks for that, Zara. Just making sure I was off mute. So we're really excited to have you all here today. And to open the conversation, I'm going to start with some thoughts and reflections from Carrion Crespo at the International Labor Organization. Hopefully, as we move through this session, comments from the speakers will inspire questions from you. Please leave those in the chat and we'll discuss them after all speakers have had a chance to share their insights. And now I give you Carlos.
Co-coordinated the World Water Day campaign for 2016 on water and jobs. One of the things we did was draft together with the other UN Water members and partners the World Water Development Report. And in that research, we found that water is a job enabler more than a job creator. But this is not only about skills building or infrastructure development. It's much more. It's about people's and workers' participation in water governance. When we talk about indigenous communities, remote communities, we found through the projects that we had carried out in Panama, Nicaragua, and Paraguay, that women were playing a central role in managing the remote communities' water supply and sanitation. So through these projects in these three countries, we instituted what we call a community contracting program. Through these programs, the communities manage their own water supply under contract by the state. And women played a central role in governing, in managing these projects, but also in providing the traditional knowledge of these indigenous communities to solve the challenges they faced. This empowerment of women not only improved their condition, but also improved the quality of the work that was being carried out and the quality of life of the communities. Fast forward to 2021. Now the ILO is using a similar approach in Yemen. In Yemen, the communities are desalinizing the existing water tanks. They're doing local purchasing of materials, and they are receiving direct cash transfers in their community accounts and community education on the treatment of surface water. Women play a central role in addressing the problems of these water scarce communities. And through that empowerment, we create jobs too. In Paraguay, Nicaragua, and Panama, we created thousands of those. So this is a really inspiring example of how the same action, the same program implements the measures to advance SDG 6 and SDG 8, which is to promote economic development and decent work. Thank you. We remain available for further information.
Thank you for that, Carlos. I wish he could be here live, because I think that there is a lot for us to really consider and unpack here. I want to emphasize some things that he said. He said, water is a job enabler more than it is a job creator. This is a theme that we're going to come to from the other participants as well. In this example from the ILO, women were playing a central role in managing the remote community's water supply and sanitation. And in this particular case, they were even paid for that role. These women were compensated for effective water governance. Carlos observed, this empowerment of women not only improved their condition, but also improved the quality of the work and ultimately the quality of life for the communities. That is actually a perfect link to the experience of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature when they were rolling out their transboundary governance work in South and Central America. And for that, we have with us Dr. James Dalton, Director of IUCN's Global Water Program, to tell us a little bit more and explore this more deeply. So, James, I hope you turn your camera on. Thank you for joining us today.
Great, thanks, Leslie. Yeah, I mean, actually, Carlos's words really spoke to me in our own experience, and we've worked specifically with women's groups in a variety of different locations. But from the South American perspective, it's probably where we've had some of the greatest traction actually overall over the last 10 years. And I think it's due to three reasons. And I'm not saying this is specific to that geography, but certainly we've had very good traction there because one, our attention is focused on water governance to ensure that there is water available for many other uses, including wash, energy provision, agriculture, for example. So including women in that governance engagement early on is really important to ensure that decisions are made that can empower them and engage them lower down the sort of chain of command, but also to ensure that they're included at the lower field level of decision making as well. I think there's a few reasons why we've had success with that. One is that women tend to be more connected to the issues on the ground and understand the seriousness of bad governance and the seriousness of problems, be it local level corruption to pollution incidents. I think they're just more aware of the challenges, but also they have a level of energy to try and solve the solutions. They have, we found an ability to mobilize communities, an ability to mobilize action, often through other women's groups, because they tend to connect easier, perhaps, than men do. And they're just very aware of the challenges that are out there because it affects, the household, it affects the health of children, it affects the ability to go to school, it affects the condition of livestock, for example. One example we've got from Lake Titicaca, which is shared between Bolivia and Peru. Many of the women there are involved in looking after the animals, as well as collecting water, but also looking after animals as well. One of the problems that was apparent within Lake Titicaca is water quality concerns, in particular in the shallow water, where of course your livestock drink. And they noticed that certain animals wouldn't go to certain areas at certain times of the day. They wouldn't drink from there. There were dead fish. And by observing what was going on, it gives you an indication that actually water quality is a problem. And they came to some of my colleagues in the region and said, we'd really like to set up some form of water quality monitoring because we have anecdotal evidence that there are problems with water quality, but we also need scientific evidence to take it to the authorities to give us that level of backing and understanding that we've got an ability here to put, if you like, scientific evidence behind what we're observing. And we can't get the authorities to do that because we don't have that level of legitimacy. So we provided them with the support and resources so that we could get certain things tested. It gives the evidence base. And that allowed them to go to the municipalities to say, we'd like a more formal regime here of monitoring water quality. So we can actually trace where the problems are coming from, look to solve them, put ourselves in certain roles that help to articulate where the problem lies and how we fix that. And some of the women involved were actually counsellors, and they're able to also target female counsellors to ensure that they're aware of the issues as well. And I think these types of examples demonstrated both the role of women in empowering action, the role of women to identify problems and look to solve them, the role of using data in that context as well, so that you can actually, as Carlos said, not necessarily create jobs, but you're empowering people to do their job and their tasks better through monitoring water quality, trying to solve problems, increasing awareness around water quality to the actual Lake Titicaca Authority, who is responsible overall between the two states to understand that. So very quickly elevating water quality to an international level between the countries. And right now, over the last 2 years, of course, with COVID affecting things as well, we've been supporting them remotely with looking at using remote water quality testing kits. And they're even using drones for understanding pollution, plumes, and sedimentation issues as well. And so, bringing women into that context, into that environment, has opened up a whole range of other water quality challenges or water governance management arrangements that need to be better understood, better empowered, better resourced, and in so doing, create a better environment for the Lake Titicaca overall, and for the water users of the lake, including the natural environment. So for us, these things are critical because they enable the cascade of how water is used downstream, if you like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll stop there. That gives you an overview.
It does, and that's a really great insight, James. And I want to pick up on something you said shortly before the end about, and this is, again, continuing the theme that Carlos really started, which is one of our overarching themes, is that, these improvements, the inclusion of women, the empowerment of women allows them, and then this access to governance and to basic needs such as water and sanitation really enables them to do their job better. And with that, I want to turn actually to Mr. Sashwat Rath, who is Senior Manager for Global Sustainability at Gap Incorporated, where he also serves as Deputy Chief of Party for the Women in Water Alliance. The Women in Water Alliance is a partnership between GAP and USAID, which is committed to improving and sustaining the health and well-being of women and communities touched by the apparel industry in India. So Sashwat, thank you so much for joining this conversation.
Thank you, Leslie. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel.
Yeah, so the Women in Water Alliance is actually the continuation or progression of what is known within the GAP community as the PACE program. Could you share for everyone participating today the evolution of this journey, starting from the initial moment of insight to PACE, then to the Women in Water Alliance? And now that this program has been active for some time, have you and the team noticed any results? Have there been any unanticipated insights and learning?
Yeah, sure. PACE is the full form for PACE is Personal Advancement and Career Enhancement. It's a gapping flagship program that we started for female garment workers. It's a life skill program which has several topics, including things like communication, financial literacy, water sanitation and hygiene, and so on and so forth. There's also a module on decision making. And we did it for quite some time in factory setting, where we used to go to the female garment workers. And this used to be a staggered process where we would give them one module, teach them one module, ask them to implement it in their real life, and then come back, talk about it, and then move on to the next module, trying to solve for the issues that they had faced from the previous module. So a very structured way of doing it. We did see a very good participation from women. And we did see that people are getting very interested in this. But what we also realized in this whole process is eventually within the factory setting, they're able to take a lot of decision and whatnot. But in the community, they need a bit more. So we for their wash needs. So we had to take wash need and the whole PACE program from the factory setting to the community setting. And that's where, in Women in Water Alliance is one of those examples where we're working in 2 states in India where we're taking PACE program. But just knowledge is not good enough. You need to create the enabling environment for women to get the wash infrastructure in place. So things like, you need microfinance for your wash needs. We have been partnering with water.org on that, who has been supporting on the wash financing, microfinance. Then you need water governance, right? And we have been partnering with WaterAid on that aspect. Then another part is the water quality and the water uses in the community. The community we are working in mostly cotton growing community. So cotton is a water thirsty crop, right? So we had to make sure that we are efficient on our water uses there. And on top of that, the fertilizers and the pesticides that is usually used in cotton cultivation can have an ill impact on the water quality of those areas. So we had to address that as well. So we have been working on good operating practices for cotton cultivation in this region. We have been working with farmers on that. Overall, all of this premises is based on women as the change agent. Someone who is going to be at the community level. They are the one who are managing the entire show, so to say. Now, coming back to your question on the impact, or there are several impacts, Leslie. I will talk a bit about the economic impacts, which is more relevant to our discussion today. What we realized is due to the wash needs, the women in this community used to travel around 1.5 hours, 90 minutes every day to fetch water. which led to a potential income reduction of 9%, right? Now, getting this water to their home within their premises is potentially saving that money, which they can use for income generation, they can use for their family, they can use for themselves, which eventually will lead to some kind of an economic impact. That's one. The other part is the fund mobilized for WASH financing that water.org has been working on. More than $7 million of microfinance has been mobilized for this for the WASH needs in this community. Now look at it this way. This could have been a potential miss or an unmet need for these women, where you create the demand, but they're not able to afford it because they don't have that minimum fund that they require. So this is, again, getting that $7 million to them is so much important. And like I said, we have been working with farmers. We have been working with 3,000 farmers on the good operating practices for cotton cultivation. This has increased the cotton yield by 23% and has decreased the cost of cultivation by $71 per acre. A very direct economic impact of the work that we have been doing. On top of that, we have been also promoting on the biofertilizers and biopesticides. So we have been training women entrepreneurs in these communities. We have trained 26 of them till now. And they have generated an income of $750, sorry. And with the potential of, we are looking at $4,000 per year out of the sale of the biofertilizers and biopesticides, which in turn is also going to help the water quality in this location.
Wow, there's so much there. I am vaguely concerned about time, but I did want to just sort of emphasize what I heard you say at the end there, is that basically in really facilitating access to WASH, whether it's in the factory itself and then also at the home of where the factory workers live, that there is actually a business case for both the female garment workers and the businesses that employ them. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. And we see WASH in the workplace as extremely important, Leslie. In our social audits, we do look into the WASH infrastructure very carefully in each of the factory settings. In fact, supervisors see a value in getting WASH right in their factories. Some of the key KPIs that could that you could potentially positively impact on includes reduction in absenteeism, the productivity could go high, the attrition rate could drop. I don't have the figures right now with me on this, but definitely these are the ones which could be positively impacted. In fact, I'll leave you with one anecdotal evidence from one of my personal visits to a factory in Bangalore in India, where I met a female garment worker who had joined this factory because her previous factory didn't have good WASH infrastructure, and she had to undergo, she would go for maladaptive practices, holding herself throughout the day, and she thought that's not good for her health. And that's why she saw that this factory has got good WASH infrastructure, and she joined this factory and was planning to stay in that factory for a longer duration. So yeah, just an anecdotal evidence to leave you with, Leslie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for these insights, Shashwat. Validating the idea that there is a business case on both sides for the workers as well as the employers is an important understanding that needs to be highlighted and shared more broadly. I mean, many of us who are participating here today, we have social motivations for doing what we do, but for us to reach further and deeper and make the changes we want, we have to be able to speak to the business side of the house if we're really going to have, the impact that we desire, which conveniently brings me over to Elizabeth. Elizabeth Ballreich is Principal Investment Officer at Women's World Banking Asset Management. Women's World Banking Asset Management is a subsidiary of Women's World Banking. and they direct equity investment into the inclusive finance institutions within Women's World Banking Network. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Leslie.
So Women's World Banking started the Capital Partners Fund, which is specifically designed for women's economic empowerment a few years ago, if I recall correctly.
Correct.
Yeah. And even though this fund is not water or wash specific, this is still a pretty important and demonstrative action in terms of developing a women-focused fund. And so could you share with us a few, first off, what really motivated Women's World Banking to start this fund to begin with?
Sure, definitely. So Women's World Banking, the large organization, has been working for over 40 years now on women's economic empowerment and has been working with local financial service providers through providing them technical assistance to support them to serve more low-income women with financial products and services in order to give them the tools and means to build financial prosperity and security for themselves and their families. So what we saw as this industry developed is that a lot of these initial microfinance institutions that were very women focused, they over time became more regulated for-profit institutions. And we saw that the percentage of women clients dropped significantly. And also internally, the management and board became much more male dominated. So some of them started to look much more like the traditional commercial banks we know. So we as an organization saw a role for us to not only be a partner for technical assistance, but also become an investor and shareholder in these institutions in order to make sure they remain very focused on their original missions to serve low-income women and also be very gender diverse internally. In addition, we also wanted to show this business case that you were just talking about to really show to the investment community that there is a positive financial return also by focusing on women's economic empowerment.
Wonderful. And so building on that, can you share, especially in relation, I think, well, more overall, and you kind of touched on this already, but how has the investment focus evolved since your organization started investing in women's financial inclusion?
Definitely. So over the last 10 years, the industry has actually evolved quite a bit. So as I mentioned initially, these were mainly microfinance institutions, but they themselves evolved and they started to offer many more different products and services. So initially, these were a lot of traditional group loans that were very focused on women micro entrepreneurs, but now they started offering individual loans, savings, insurances. On the other hand, we also have now a lot more different players in the market. You have financial technology companies, your commercial banks, you have telecom companies, insurance providers that start moving into that space. But what we saw is that as the industry evolved, sometimes, as also had mentioned, women were left behind, or women were very much grouped into this very traditional initial product that was designed around these group loans, but those didn't really serve all of the financial needs. And for example, I think WASH is a good example in that, as it doesn't often neatly fit into this very traditional group loan that's designed for micro entrepreneurs and productive purposes. So we as an investor also had to focus on working with these institutions and making sure that all of the products and services really address the needs of women and more broadly than some of these initial initiatives that were out there. So now we invest in many more different types of players, and we're working with them through our investment, but also technical assistance to make sure in each of these products and services, they keep on focusing on women.
Okay. And we could go on about this for quite a long time, but I am a bit concerned on time. So the final question that I want to or sort of grouping of questions I'd like to ask is, your fund right now, as we highlighted, is women focused, but it is not exclusively focused on water and sanitation. And what do you think it might take for a fund to actually be solely focused on water and sanitation access, or Am I crazy? And is that not really realistic, or not the best solution? Would it be more appropriate for water and sanitation to be embedded in something, in a more multi-purpose type of fund?
So I think it would definitely be very interesting and possible to have a fund that has as a primary goal being focused on wash. I think similarly to us, our primary goal, as I mentioned, is women's financial inclusion. However, we do not see that every dollar that we invest in a company can only be used for serving women. These dollars are often used, of course, for serving men, influencing the institutional wall. However, we as an investor, we can really work on moving the needle for these companies, helping them overall to be more focused on women, and making also that business case and showing that women are very profitable customer segment. So I think similarly, as a fund focused on water and sanitation, you can be a type of investor that helps institutions to focus more on these specific challenges, implement best practices. So maybe not every dollar is only purely going to that focus, but every investment that you make can really move the needle in creating a positive impact on water and sanitation access to low-income women and men around the world.
This is fascinating. It's going to be fun to sort of think and evolve these kind of ideas as we move forward. So thank you for that. And with this, I am now pleased to hand over the second half of this session to Lesha Whitmer, who is a steering committee member as well as advocacy lead for the Women for Water Partnership. This is a membership organization that advocates for women's empowerment using water as the entry point. We've spent the first half of this session looking basically from the top down at solutions, but now we're really going to explore the connection between access to water and sanitation and women's economic empowerment from the bottom up. So Lesha, over to you.
Thanks, Leslie, and thank you all for all the contributions so far. Without losing too much time, as Leslie said, you are now going to hear voices of the women on the grassroots level who actually got access to finances to look into their water needs in their own community. And the first one is Pranita Vankere from India. And as Leslie said before, you will also hear her translator. So Bram, can you start the video, please? Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. We're happy to welcome Novi, who lives in Jakarta in Indonesia and works for a company, Bina Arta. And you see a little sign on the bottom, which basically says, do this together. Bersama Mita Bisa. The lady here is 32 years old, and she keeps telling me, no, 33, but that's in November. Bram, you have to stop this one and start the other one, and also the video. This is the second one. Sorry for this, guys.
Technology just continues to be a learning and evolving process.
Absolutely. Hello, Pranita Vankere.
Bram, we can't see
we
can only hear. Great video, though.
Hello, Pranita Vankere. Very welcome to our session. You live in Maharashtra in India, in a smaller village. And with you is Sagar Sener, who is helping us with the translation. So thank you very much for that, Sagar. And we'll do a little bit of a question and answer session. And Pranita, we asked her to be on this session because she is a borrower, took a loan to be able to have wash facilities in her house, in her home. So my first question, Pranita, is why did you decide to apply for a loan?
Okay. प्रणिता ताई ते विचारत आहे की तुम्ही का डिसाइड केलं वॉश लोन घेण्यासाठी?
Please.
कारण का वॉश लोन मुळे मला वॉश लोन महत्व कळलं आणि त्याच्यामुळे माझ्या मुलांची तब्येत खराब होत होती तर त्या वॉश लोन याच्यासाठी त्या फिल्टर घ्यायसाठी आणि टॉयलेट आणि बाथरूम साठी घ्यायचं.
Okay. She told that during the introductory meeting by Shilpa ma'am from water.org collaboration with W+W Alliance, she came to know you can get a wash loan, small wash loan for sanitation facilities. And in her family, her children are getting suffer from diarrhea, typhoid, waterborne diseases. So she decided to take wash loan.
Okay, that is very clear. So you have to pay the loan back. So how are you able to do that? What is the income of your household, your salary or your other income that you're able to pay back a loan?
Okay. हे जे लोन घेतलंय तर त्याचं तुम्ही परतफेड कशी करता म्हणजे तुमचं इन्कम कुठून येते जसं तुम्ही सांगितलं ते सांगा.
एसएचजी मधून परत लोन घेतलं आणि ते त्याच्या परतफेड मंथली करत आहे आणि शेती आहे शेतीमधून थोडेफार त्याच्यातून आणि मी उमेद अभियान मध्ये जॉब करते त्याच्यामधून मंथली परतफेड करत आहे.
Okay. She told that she is a member of self-help group and in self-help group she is also getting money to save and her husband is also a farmer. So some help she can get from her husband, and she is a CLF cluster level federation manager in Umed Abhiyan. So she is getting little bit salary from there also. So she is repaying that loan easily.
Okay, okay, that's very clear. Do you also have other benefits from now having wash in your home? So like more time or better health of your children or lower costs of your bills, or what are the benefits for you?
हे वॉश लोन घेतल्यानंतर तुम्हाला काय काय फायदे झाले ते त्यांना सांगा.
त्याच्यामुळे माझा वेळ वाचला आणि माझ्या मुलांची तब्येत जे सतत बिमार राहत होते किंवा त्यांचं आरोग्य खराब राहत होतं त्या वॉश त्याच्यामुळे आमची तब्येत वगैरे व्यवस्थित झाली आणि आम्हाला टाइम आणि माझे सासरे यांची फॅमिली यांची हेल्थ गुड झाली.
Okay. She told that previously before getting wash loan, previously she used to collect water from tap water connection, and directly they used to drink that water, her family members and so after getting wash loan, water filter and toilet and bathroom,
Hello, Pranita. Bram, can you move it up to a few minutes later?
okay. She told that previously before getting wash loan, previously she used to collect water from tap water connection, and directly they used to drink that water, her family members and so after getting wash loan, water filter and toilet and bathroom, her family members are not getting frequently sick, and she also saved medical expenses, and she is also getting more time, and she is using that time to produce to use that time in her house. and all people are getting healthy in her family. Her father-in-law is also old age, so he is also feeling good now.
Okay, so I remember when we spoke earlier that you said that you're saving a lot of time or having a lot of other time to do other things. And you said it was like 3 to 4 hours difference in a day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
3 ते 4 तास वाजता ते बरोबर आहे का तुमचं म्हणणं?
हो, मला 3 ते 4 तास वाजते हे माझं बरोबर आहे. कारण आम्हाला येण्या-जाण्यास शौचालय आणि पाणी भरण्यासाठी आणि खूप त्रास होत होता. आता आमची ते वेळ वाचते आणि त्याच्यामुळे मी दुसरे काम पण करू शकते आरामात.
Okay. She told that we are saving 3 to 4 hours in a day because she used to go for toilet for a long distance, and she used to take her child also to take to defecate open defecation. So she is spending more time during fetching of water also. So she is getting 3 to 4 hours in a day. That is correct.
I think that's wonderful. Does it also mean, for instance, that your children can go to school more?
Sorry, ma'am.
Can your children also go to school more because they're less sick?
मुलं पण आता शाळेत जाताना आधी त्यांना प्रॉब्लेम व्हायचा का मग शाळेत जायला? आता शाळेत रेग्युलर जातात का?
हो, रेग्युलर.
सांगा ना त्यांना.
पहिले ते शाळेत जायसाठी त्यांना वेळ होत होता. त्यांना शौचालयाला जायला लांब पडत होतं आणि पाण्यासाठी. आता त्यांच्यामुळे त्यांना तयारी आणि त्यांचा अभ्यासाचा पण वेळ वाचला आणि अभ्यास पण करायला त्यांना टाइम मिळत आहे.
Okay. She told that previously her child used to go to school, but not regularly because they are frequently they are getting sick. Sometimes they used to sick in a school also, but after getting after availing the wash loan, so they are attending the school regularly.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, could you tell us, as my last question, what you would advise to other women? What should they do?
इतर महिलांना तुम्ही काय प्रोत्साहन देऊ शकता तुमच्या याच्यातून?
इतर महिलांना की तुम्ही वॉश मधून तुम्ही लोन घ्या आणि वॉटर फिल्टर आणि शौचालय बांधकाम करा. त्याच्यामुळे आपलं आरोग्य आणि आपलं चांगलं होते आणि आपला वेळ पण वाचते आणि आपल्यासाठी आयुष्यात आपल्याला चांगलं करायचं असलं तर ह्या गोष्टी आवश्यक आहे आणि ते आपण प्रत्येकाने आपल्या घरी असायलाच पाहिजे हे सर्वांना आम्ही माहिती देतो.
Okay. She is a SHG member and she cluster level federation manager also. So in her village, 25 SHGs are working in her Buzga village. So she used to tell the women, take wash loan and save your time, stay away from the waterborne diseases. She always inspire them to take a loan, and she is giving her example always to them.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much, Pranita, for sharing your experience with us. And thank you, Sagar, for doing this wonderful translation job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And hope to hear more from you in the future.
Yeah.
Well, apologies, everybody, for the fact that we had a podcast in the beginning instead of a video, but we will upload the complete video later on so that you can have another look. And I think maybe you missed out on one little item. She said that because of the fact that she now had wash in her house and saved so much time, she basically also could start another little business making noodles, which earns her an additional income. So having said that, I'm going to another part of Asia, to Indonesia. And this is a lady called Novi, and Bram, can you please start the video? Good morning, good afternoon. We're happy to welcome Novi, who lives in Jakarta in Indonesia and works for a company, Bina Arta. And you see a little sign on the bottom, which basically says, do this together. Bersama Mita Bisa. The lady here is 32 years old, and she keeps telling me, no, 33, but that's in November. In any case, you're a good example of a young career woman.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me.
Our pleasure. So my first question, why did your company decide to offer water and sanitation loans?
So we did research in 2015 to understand whether we have a demand or not to this product. And apparently, based on the research, our customer base shows a very great interest in it. So we decided that we try the pilot, and the result as well says that it is a big opportunity for us.
Okay. And you keep doing it during COVID. Did that change anything?
I think we learned that during the COVID, the interest on hygiene lifestyle is increasing. So we want to make sure that we also take that opportunity to provide or serve our customer who, throughout this product. If they need hand washing facilities in their businesses, then we will be more than happy to provide the loan for them to have that kind of facilities. Yeah.
Okay, so basically you extended the possibility.
Correct. And also because we learned that many other institutions probably don't see this as an opportunity. So we take that as part of our strategy.
You're absolutely right. So what are the criteria that you use to decide whether the women can get a loan?
There are several criteria, but most importantly, we give loan to a group of women. So there need to be more than about 10 people in the group, and they need to be in the neighborhood, within the neighborhood, and they have to be business owner, because we don't ask collateral. So we need to visit their business to make sure they have a productivity to earn income.
Okay. And then you got, of course, you got responses from the women.
Correct.
Why? What is it doing for them?
Well, I'm going to say one example that we found last year from one of our customers. Says that before she has the water connections through our loan, she needs to take about 50 meters away to take water for her family very early in the morning, and she has 5 kids, so you can imagine how much of water she needs every morning. And on top of that, every raining season, the water is getting smelly and bad. They cannot consume. So she needs to take another walk to get the water. So it seems like the loan itself gives more productivity for her and her children.
Okay, that's very clear. So what would be the reason for you to continue doing this?
Well, I think based on our history, even during the pandemic, we see the demand is still there. So in the future, we think we will be keep serving the same customer base, and we know that the market itself still high. We know that the wash loan is not limited. There are so many area that can help our customer in the wash loan itself. So we are hoping in the future we not only give the group loan, but also individual loan.
Okay. Well, thank you, Novi, for sharing your experience and what your company is doing. And I hope we'll hear more from you in the future.
Thank you.
And thank you for this little interview.
Thank you.
So that was an interesting story on a local company giving loans to women. And now I'd like to turn to Rose. Rose, can you turn on your camera, please. Hello, Rose. Rose is my great friend from Kenya. She lives in Nairobi. She has an horrendous job. So we were actually pleased that this session was taking place in the evening, so she could actually be there. She's a member of the steering committee of Women for Water. She is a seroptimist. And above all, she is a very, very capable project overseer, instigator, motivator of projects related to water and sanitation for women. And now she laughs, but I'm serious, Rose, this is really the case. So, Rose, when we talked earlier, you were telling me that you have worked with basically 3 different funds that make finance available for women. So can you tell us a little bit about how these funds work? Who are running it? Who are doing it?
Okay, thank you so much, Lesha. I'm glad to be part of this panel. I'll be talking about revolving fund. And the revolving fund, there are major 2 types of revolving fund, the formal one and the informal one. Formal is run by government, but I'd like to zero in on what is run by women, the women group, which is the informal revolving fund. Initially, what the women did was they did what is called merry-go-round. That is a form of raising funds and giving out to one member of the group. And it goes on round till all the members of the group have accessed this kind of funding. That is mainly for consumption. The revolving fund I'm interested in to talk today is about the revolving fund for income generating. In Kenya, it's actually called table banking, and there are different forms of table banking. And so this particular fund, it's the women that raise the money. It is the women that manage the money. It is the women that lend out the money. They set out the rules. The main thing about this particular funding is that it's a very simple way of keeping your money within the community, rather than taking it to the bank, so that the women can be able to access that particular money at a short notice. Apart from that, the main advantage of this particular kind of funding is that you have low interest rate, you have accessibility to the money in the shortest time possible. It is the interest rate is definitely friendly. There is no collateral, and you can get your money, your loan as soon as today, as long as you are a member, you have contributed to that particular group, you have a guarantor, and you're willing to pay, you're good to go. You'll manage and you'll be able to move. Women have also added some more digital innovation to their contribution of the money. There's an app called Chango that women can use, and it keeps a track of how people are depositing the money into this particular account. Remember, the revolving fund, the women can either put their money one-off, that means you put it only once, or the money can be put in periodically in order to maintain the revolving fund. At the end of the year, usually, the interest that has been raised from the loans that have been made, the group can decide either to share that money or to grow their fund a bit more, or to split half-half, get dividends to the members and grow the fund. The main challenge would be that if members did not pay, that could actually break the group, because most of these things are done through trust, and commitment to the group. The other bit would be that if women wanted a big sum of money, they might not be able to access that kind of money, because the money will be limited according to how much money they have in their kitty. That would be the most important thing. You would ask, so how does it relate to water? Water is an enabler. I'm here because of the Mwihoko Women Group, which is in Nakuru, which is a group that has mobilized their community to get water. Over 10 years, they didn't have water at all. They used to go many, many miles to get water. Today, as we talk, they have piped water in their compounds. And out of all this funding, that to be able to get funding even for their project, they had to raise money in the beginning. But towards the end of the project also, whatever money remained, that was left as seed money for them. And the members have continued adding money into that fund, which now they have available for lending for any other activity. So if it is this water that brought them together to make the group, to make them develop, then I really would want to look at water as an enabler of a lot of development at community level on the ground.
Okay, Rose, thank you. We unfortunately are running out of time. An hour is not very much, but I think you made it very clear how it works. And I think it was very nice that you made the circle back to enabling. So thank you very, very much. And I will quickly give the floor either to Elizabeth or Zira. And as I said, the videos we will upload on our webpage.
Thank you, Lesha. I will wrap it up for us here. There you go. Thanks all for joining this remarkable conversation. I think we've learned a lot. There were some major takeaways that I have taken away from this conversation that I'd like to just share with you guys as we wrap up the session this final minute. First, we heard from James that women's inclusion in the financial and operational decisions about water and sanitation lead to better results at all levels. So we heard this on the community level, we heard about it at the household level, we heard about it also in the place of employment. So we're seeing that these inclusion of women is really leading to a great impact everywhere. Then we heard from Seshwan from The Gap, who really emphasized that access to wash, again, at the home as well as in the workplace, it's a critical component for a woman's ability to realize her full earning potential, and it's also a driver for business. We heard that there is a business case for both the female garment workers and the factory as the employer. So we should think about, Leslie said that oftentimes we are coming at it from the social aspect, but we need to think about the actual business case that water and sanitation access can also make. We also heard from Elizabeth from the Women's World Banking Asset Management, and we learned that the financial institutions and the development organizations who are serving low-income clients, they should recognize that the income enabling dimension of household access to wash, and they should develop the financial tools to help women achieve this access. So those tools include things like microloans, which ties really nicely to where Rose brought us. Rose shared with us the realities of how water acts as an enabler in the community. So water is what brought the women in the group together, but it's also opening up some of those doors for those women to make wider changes in their community. And Lesha, thanks again for bringing in those interviews with the women from India and Indonesia. I think that helps provide and paint a really great picture of how from the top to bottom, we should be able to have this conversation and see all those impacts. Before we get cut off, I want to give a big thank you for everyone who joined this session and for everyone who's put in their comments and questions in the chat. Thank you all for your participation, and we hope to see you soon on a different platform and a different event. Thank you all. Lesha, anything to add?
Sorry,
I saw you popped up. Didn't know if you wanted to say anything.
No, I just wanted to say goodbye to everybody and thank you for participating.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. I hope we can continue this conversation in new and different ways moving forward. It's a really important theme that hasn't been explored properly enough yet, but there's time.
That's right. Bye-bye.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.